bones. You see how important it is, guys? Laterally, there's a little bit there called the lateral wings, the greater wings of the sphenoid, which is right here. It's connecting frontal bone and parietal bone, all right, with zygomatic bone and maxillary. So you guys, you see why I call it the keystone bone? Because it's the key bone that almost every bone is associating with somehow or another. See? And so, that's the skull. Any questions? You got your occipital bone back there. Your temporal bone has the petrous portion, has the squamous portion. So you have cranial 1, cranial nerve number 2. Then you have cranial nerve number 8. So when you look at the skull from the side view, there's that big old mastoid process I was telling you about. And then sure enough, you got, so it's a little bit lower, it's right about there. That's the external acoustic meatus. This part is the petrous portion of the temporal bone. Then you have this other part that extends out. That's called the squamous portion of the temporal bone. So there you have temporal bone, occipital bone, temporal bone, parietal bone, occipital bone. Right here, you get this little part of the sphenoid that's right in here. Then you got this part of your frontal bone. The sphenoid's kind of squashed in between there. You got your zygomatic bone with the arch, and what it's doing is it's connecting. Everybody see that arch? It's connecting temporal bone. Zygomatic bone and temporal bone connect to create zygomatic arch. Another beautiful place. If someone can teach you how to throw a very hard punch at the right spot, I can break the arch. By breaking the arch, I can cause the bone to fracture, splinter, cause massive pain to the temporal bone, which will prevent you from elevating your jaw. Okay? So the idea is, don't piss me off, right? Right? The idea is, guys, don't piss anybody off, right? Because you never know who knows this, right? This is common knowledge for people who do martial arts, mixed martial arts, right? I've known this since I was a child. And I would use this regularly when I would get into fights to hurt people on purpose. Right?
Did it work?
So, yeah, it worked. It worked really well. Right? If you hit him right here in this general region right here, you get a nice, clean, squared off punch. You can cause loss of consciousness. Right? It doesn't take much. All you just have to know is how to twist right and duck. So you let them swing first, and you counter punch. Stand back up, and you twist. You twist as hard as you can. You bring as much force from the ground, from your feet, and you just distribute it across the surface of your knuckles, right? And you make sure you keep your thumb out like this, because you'll break your thumb if you do that, right? It happened to me once because I hit somebody really hard like this. I jammed my thumb up for a long time. You do like this, and right there. And you get it good enough, right? And they'll lose consciousness. So you don't have to be big. I can tell you that from experience. You just have to know where to strike. Right? Like the snake is not a big animal, is it? But the snake knows what? It knows where to strike, huh? And knows how to strike when it needs to. That's the idea. All right? That's the idea of self-defense. So, all right. So vulnerabilities of the human body in the skull. But sure enough, the skull is quite elaborate and quite beautiful in that what? It can accommodate for the brain, developing brain. If excess fluid accumulates, it'll stretch out. All we got to do is tap it and bring it back down. Right? It accommodates for the birthing process. So it has plates that are not fused, so you can come out the vagina, right? Sliding out the vagina, right? And then it'll seal. So the fontanelles will seal shut, and they'll become fibrous sutures. Everybody hear me? So in the textbook in chapter 9, fibrous sutures, you should know the fibrous sutures of the skull. The sigmoidal sutures. All right? The lambdoidal suture. Okay? So the sutures, you should know those sutures. Okay? Any questions, guys?
So you said something about the cranial nerve 8?
Yeah, so cranial nerve 8 is actually going to be hidden within this temporal bone that you really can't see. And if I were to draw it, it'd be coming in like that. And in here, in this bone, there's going to be this apparatus. This is what I'm talking about. We'll learn about later. It looks like a snail shell here, and then it's got this kind of semicircular canals, the vestibule, the cochleum vestibule, and then the cochlea. This is the vestibule, which is known as the utricle and saccule, and those are the semicircular canals. And this whole thing, guys, this whole thing is designed with a membrane, with fluid in it, and then it's wrapped with bone so that there's two chambers filled with fluid. And this part is responsible for amplification of sound, and this part is responsible for sensing changes in velocity, which would be acceleration. This is why I can put you in a car, and you may be able to tell that you're going a certain speed, but you wouldn't be able to tell if you had no references. In other words, you have nothing to look at on the side of the road, right? But if I then jump, if I go and accelerate, you can sense acceleration, can't you? Because your ears, the device that's in the temporal bone, guys, is designed to sense acceleration. Sure enough, why? Because we're in a constant acceleration. Didn't I agree with you? A constant dynamic acceleration. Acceleration due to gravity, yes? So as the Earth is spinning, remember we talked about this gravitational pull between the Earth and the Sun, and then the gravitational pull between the Moon and the Earth, and of course the Moon and the Sun, that impacts our overall bone development. Yeah? Separately, don't forget that we produce what? An active form of vitamin D from skin, which aids us in the process of depositing bone. Yes? And we'll talk about that more today. Yeah?
Why is it that people that are born in one eye, they don't have like that perception? How would you do that?
Don't know. I have to, in general, two eyes does work better because they're overcasted one on the other. So each eye has a visual field that's associated with a retina on the back of the eye. But each visual field is casted upon the other visual field. It's not like we have two different eyes, one pointed in one direction, so I can't be looking at her and looking at him at the same time, right? I kind of could be, right?
But it's going to be kind of peripheral.
But what I'm really doing is I'm looking at you and kind of looking at them through periphery instead of looking at. So I can't look at her and look at him at the same time. I can't look at him and look at her. So if I'm looking at his face, I can't be looking at her face, and I can't focus on detail and stuff. But I can see, either one of them in the periphery. It's because both eyes are designed to crisscross at a point. They're not parallel. Oh, so we're talking geometry? Two lines that intersect at a point? Yeah. That's what it is. Sure enough, you go into physics, you'll see that everything that we perceive, guys, in our lens gets flipped upside down and right side left. And our brain, it has to reassimilate. This is why it takes us a whole year to figure out how to stand. Any other living creature that gives birth to their young, they stand up. Horses, they stand up. Rats, they stand up. Pigs, they stand up. Cats and dogs, they stand up. Yeah, we can't stand up. We can't stand up because it takes us a whole year to assimilate. Plus, we've got to myelinate our neurons. So it takes time. Everything takes time for us. Because we're complex. Not that we're advanced, because I think plants are more advanced than us. They don't have to work for them; they can just sit in the sun all day.
So for sake of
and they can live. They can live longer. They've lived here. They've been here longer than us, and they'll be here after us, as long as there's some sunlight, right? We just so okay.
For the sake of asking, are there any other mammals that perhaps have the process of having to not be able to walk immediately?
No, we're the only ones who do not have the ability to stand the moment we're born. You look at cattle.
I'm asking more for, so I guess like age and whatever.
No, you look at, I mean, like almost, I don't know of any other mammal that when born has to sit and gestate for another year to figure out how to sit up. And it's solely dependent. Like in the wild, yeah, that just wouldn't happen, right? You would wind up being eaten.
Right.
You get me?
Yeah.
Because like somebody's gonna come around and realize, hey, you got a fresh baby that if you don't feed, but if you don't eat, then at some point you got to leave the baby, unless you're in a herd, unless you're multiple animals that can take care of each other's babies. You get, guys, you see why humans kind of stayed together, stuck together, at least for some period of time. They had no other choice. Because if not, they're going to be somebody else's food, for sure. At least the babies would be.
Right.
So they had to figure out ways to living in caves, living in trees, making some kind of hut, protective devices, domesticating dogs and other animals for protection purposes, things like that. All of it kind of makes sense when you look at it in the human evolution and history of it all. So any questions on this so far, guys? So each and every one of these bones are an independent center of ossification. Desde cuando está eso tan aprendido?
There's a clock there.
No, I didn't even notice that the screen thing was on. All right, anyway, someone must have used it. So guys, so you got the mandible. All right, now the mandible is interesting because the mandible isn't just this thin thing that I drew up here. So right here, where the temporal bone is, the mandibular condyle is going to sit. And then it looks like this. And then you got your angle. Let's give him a chin. Crimson chin. Those of you who watch cartoons, right? Yeah, that's right. So guys, you see that right there? So that's the mandibular condyle. That right there is a ramus. Sorry, that right there is the ramus. That's the body, that's the angle. That right there is called the coronoid process. Sure enough, a muscle that's right in here called the temporal fossa, because sure enough, look, a large portion of this is the temporal, along with the sphenoid bone, some of the frontal bone. And there's a shallow fossa there, and this fanned out muscle will come, and its tendon will sneak underneath the zygomatic arch. Everybody see that? And its tendon will sneak under the zygomatic arch and insert onto that. So you see why I said, hey, this is perfect. This is perfect if I really want to cause you pain. Because if I snap that arch, then that muscle, you're going to have problems chewing. You everybody see, guys? And you'll learn about this. That muscle's called the, oh my gosh. It sits in the temporal fossa. What muscle do you think they're going to call it? Temporalis. Oh, that's so hard. Guys, what do you think it does?
Supports the jaw. Supports the jaw.
Closing gravity does that. Muscle
Closing your jaw?
elevates the jaw.
Elevates the jaw.
Elevates, see right here?
Yeah,
Elevates
you said
the jaw.
gravity pulls it down, so.
Gravity pulls it down. So the muscle, designed in its way, when it shortens, will pull. See how it passes the joint? Look at that. It's a pivot joint. You relax the muscle, the jaw drops. See that? Tense the muscle up. Whoop. Squeeze. Right? Yeah. Right?
So what causes lockjaw?
What causes lockjaw? A displaced temporal mandibular joint causes lockjaw.
Sorry?
A displaced temporal mandibular joint causes lockjaw.
So.
If you get a subluxation of this fibrocartilaginous disc along with the joint itself, that constant dissonance,
Right.
all right, dissonance, you're going to do teeth and night, sort of your teeth eroding, and it destabilizes the joint, temporal mandibular joint. Then you can get lockjaw due to tetanus. So tetanus it's exposure. Tetanus is a bacteria that produces a toxin. Being exposed to the tetanus toxin, it causes the muscle to completely contract down. That's called tetanus. And then in here, it will cause lockjaw.
Right.
Very painful.
And what
Fatal
about this-
if that toxin reaches the abdomen, the diaphragm, then it'll cause the diaphragm to contract and never relax. So it'll go from being domed to going flat, and then you won't be able to breathe.
What causes bruxism?
I'm sorry?
Bruxism.
Not sure. I haven't looked that one up.
It's the, you know, that you sleep and you friction your teeth, your jaw goes back and forth.
I mean, yeah, there's psychological conditions that cause that. There's organic, I'm sure there's organic disease that would do that, but there's psychological conditions too. A series of them, OCD type A personality disorder. Like if you're type A personality, you gotta be right at night. You rehearse all the things that you're worried about because you're that OCD type A personality type person. You clench your jaw at night, things like that. It has a lot to do with it. Yeah.
It's not a joke. But what about like a subconscious oral fixation? Just curious, random thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's, again, there's lots of psychiatric conditions and disorders that would lead to problems with that joint. And the destabilizing that joint, people we don't think much about it, but I mean, guys, this is as perfect as it gets when it comes to a joint that's designed for the purpose of shifting your mandible, because we don't just do this. We also do this. And it's most noticeable when you see somebody chewing gum.
Right.
You see the jaw doing this. All right? You see it doing this elliptically or orbital kind of movement, elliptic orbital type movement. And that's because the way the mandible is situated with the temporal mandibular joint between the temporal bone and the mandibular bone, you hear me? The joint between the two bones called the TMJ, temporal mandibular joint. Well, it's not just about, you learn that there are other muscles, not just the temporalis muscle that acts on the mandible. There's 3 other sets of muscles. So you have the temporalis, then sure enough, from here to here, and again, this isn't on this test, this is for the next test, but just so you know. From the underside of the zygomatic arch to the mandible, body of the mandible, guys, there's this huge bar. Look at this. See that right there? Look at that muscle group. See that muscle group right there? That muscle group there, that's called the masseter. That guy right there is the masseter. And what he's doing is he's coming from here and he's going to here. See that? He's not the cheek muscle. Cheek muscle's different. This guy's going to elevate the jaw as well. It's going to elevate the mandible. So I'm not moving my maxilla. Does everyone understand that? My maxilla is fixed in position. You ever understand that? Separately, remember that the maxilla has to fuse midline to produce the floor of the nasal cavity and also the roof of the oral cavity. Yeah? Because if you look here in my primitive drawing, this is the nasal cavity. This is the oral cavity. Now it's interesting because separate of those superior and middle nasal concha, you've got these other bones that are of their own. And those are the inferior nasal concha. Okay? Those are your inferior nasal concha. So those are their own bones, guys. The inferior nasal concha are their own bones. They don't belong to the maxilla. They don't belong to the ethmoid bone. They're their own bones. I said that 3 times now. Separately, in the ethmoid bone, in the lateral wall, like I was saying, because this is the medial aspect of the orbit, this part, and this is the aspect of the nasal cavity, in between here, it's airy. So they call them air cells. Ethmoid air cells. What do they mean by that? Why would I have areas of bone that are kind of like airy like that? So I can what? So I can trap. So I can trap what smells good and what smells like shit. Why do I want to trap stuff that's, yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right? you're on your way down or you're on your way up, right, from I-95 south of it, and sure enough, what? You smell it,
So recall sentence.
right? The trash truck.
Right.
That's like 2 cars in front of you and it's dripping, man. It's dripping that nasty, slick ooze, and you can smell it. You got the AC on, right? And you're hoping you don't smell it, but that sweet smell stench is coming right through. And you smell it.